Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 28th episode of the SERPs of the Week podcast, where we discuss all possible topics around search engine optimization. I have the pleasure to introduce our guest, Peter Rota. Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Peter. Peter has over a decade of experience in SEO. He has worked with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, SMBs, and even S&P 500 clients. He brings in-depth experience with modern SEO techniques and strategies to create customized digital marketing solutions that help clients build thriving brands. Peter, we always have the same question, right? To all our guests as an icebreaker. And so here is the question for you, right? Why did you decide to go with SEO over some other marketing disciplines?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. So essentially, I mean, like kind of like most SEOs, I got into it by accident. So in 2011, I had a sports blog, and I was basically looking to figure out how to promote it. And as one does, they start doing like Google searches, and I kept hearing like SEO mentioned over and over again. And I thought like, oh, like let me see if I can try to use some of those techniques on my website. And at the time, it was like one of those blogger websites. So was able to get some initial success from there. And then I thought like maybe I'll try and get an internship, and had some success with that, and then another internship. And yeah, I mean, from there, it's kind of turned into a career. But yeah, I really happy and enjoy it. And I think I also really like SEO too, because you really need to be on your feet, and there's never like a dull day. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy I'm in it, and
No
I
end all
continue to
day,
learn as
right?
much as I can. Yeah, exactly.
With the recent Google update, especially, right? That just
Yeah,
happened, right? A week ago or something like that. Actually, I've started seeing it, even somewhere, around the first week of February. Depends for sure on the size of the domain,
mhm,
right? Right. It's
yeah.
some sites they got kind of a decent right increase in their organic traffic, while the others got a significant degrees. Did you see also some changes in your clients, rankings?
Are you talking about February or March? Because I know
Yeah, it's
they
kind
can't.
of March/February because it was kind of rolled out somewhere between, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's been sporadic. I mean, from most of the sites I manage, primarily it's a lot of branded search driving most of the traffic. But at least in some of the freelance sites I mentioned, I did see some drop
Mm-hmm.
as far as the non-branded and organic. But yeah, I mean, that's, as you're aware of, it's kind of SEO where it's like you're not going to go up every month. So it's like as long as you continue to do the right thing and proactively, I think it's just staying the course and not freaking out, even if they drop a massive update like they did yesterday.
But what do you think? Have you had the chance to see the update of the spam policies that a lot of people are currently discussing on LinkedIn and across different channels about pragmatic SEO, right? About basically against right creating
Yeah.
thin content pages, right? And also most probably what they meant is expiry domains, right? And then parasite SEO most probably just because that was against the pages that are basically kind of paid ones whenever some websites, especially media outlets, right, they put um, some paid posts on their website, especially to some controversial niches like patent loans,
Yeah.
betting, and so on. And eventually, Google is trying to most probably penalize those sites in different ways by decreasing, right, their chances
Yeah.
of ranking. What do you think about that? Because I think it has been kind of happening even before that, right? I mean, like, especially when it comes to expiring domains, right, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good policy that they're trying to be a bit more proactive. And I think beyond just SEOs, a lot of us are realizing that the quality in the search results has really just dropped. And I think I mean, it's kind of related to this, but I know like almost anytime you do a regular Google search now, there's Reddit on every result, it seems. So I think it's like, I think Google's actively trying to combat it. And I mean, I think there's definitely cases for pragmatic SEO, but I think at the same time, you need to just not like be putting out junk. And I mean, expired domains, for example, have been a tactic used for many
For
years.
a very long time, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've been often used as PBNs, or people are using them to just prop up their sites. So, I mean, it's interesting to see how it will actually play out because, as you're aware, like sometimes Google will say something, and then as we see in the results, we don't usually see it an improvement. So, I think it'll be interesting because, like, this core update seems like they're really like putting out all the stops as far as like making sure there's like AI contents getting like addressed and the unhelpful content, and just trying to really clamp down on things. And I think it's good to see they're being proactive about it because, um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's good that, well, we will see, right, whether it's going to actually affect the search engine results because that is the end point of everything, right? Whether it's just kind of the update of their policy,
Yeah,
right? Rather
yeah.
than the real update of, of what we see in search engine results. And with all those challenges, right, that we see, and with the recent Google updates, I just wanted to ask about the biggest challenges
Mhm.
that most probably SEO professionals are facing nowadays. And what are your biggest challenges, most probably, whenever it comes to SEO? That will be interesting to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now is probably the first one is the uncertainty of the SGE. So it seems like they've rolled it out in the public beta, and it's always changing constantly. And there's not been a really like concrete stance from Google when they're actually going to release it. So I think it's like a bit nerve wracking because like I've seen statistics and things where like it's going to like destroy like everyone's top of funnel traffic. So I think SEOs have definitely been on the edge about that. And I think another thing is just always keeping up to date with SEO. So I mean that's like a full-time job within itself. So I would definitely say those two things. And I think just continuing to like always making sure you're making progress and not forgetting the fundamentals. So I know AI has been like the buzzword for like a year and a half now, but I think it's important to build those good foundations with SEO. So it's like making sure you have a fast site, good user experience, making sure your content's answering the queries. You're using strong internal linking, you're creating supporting content, visitors are completing what you want them to do. Because I think as SEOs, it's like we see something new and like our focus kind of goes away. And like, I mean, you could even say that about backlinks, where sometimes people will like invest all this money into backlinks, and it's like you could have invested more time doing internal linking and having like stronger content.
Yeah, for sure. Everything should be balanced out at the end of the day, right? So you can't really, invest in one side
Yeah.
and, you know, expecting to see a stable growth. Because I think the main problem for me, right, when it comes to SEO is kind of whenever you reached a certain progress, right?
Yeah.
And you have a positive trend. The main challenge for me is to continue having this
Yeah.
positive trend because what I see, right, especially when you have a lot of acceleration, right, the trend is just kind of,
Yeah.
very, very, promising, I would say, right? It's not really a kind of, small steps, but I would say you see a significant changes month over month, quarter over quarter, right? And keeping up with these numbers, right? Repeating this success and finding, because the strategy that you used in order to build it from 0 to 10,000, there are one strategies, right? Whenever you want to go from 10,000 to 50,000, that is, something else, and so on, right? And I think that is the most problematic part here, right? To be sure that you can really kind of have it, keep it, and, kind of control it in some way, right? Because what I've seen a lot of, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I primarily work in enterprise and freelance, but I think it's mostly just being able to set those expectations and communicate to the client that like SEO is variable, and it's like just being transparent as like it's like we got here, but like maybe it'll take a bit longer to like go further. So yeah, I definitely understand that pressure where it's like you got here this fast, and like sometimes higher ups are like, let's keep going, and it's like we have to like try new things and integrate things. So yeah, I definitely like agree it can be challenging at times, but I think it's just continuing to focus on those 80/20 things. So it's like whether that's content or links, mostly, you're going to get the majority of your movement from there, but also making sure like, especially I work on heavily JavaScript websites. So it's like making sure it's server side friendly and just making sure the content's in the links and just mostly related to that stuff.
Yeah, and talking about setting up the right expectations, right? What will be the best way, right, to set up those expectations? Tell the client when do they expect to see results, or what will be the best kind of workflow here, right? Because everyone has their own understanding of what is good, what is bad, what is okay, what is not okay, right? So, and it's I think it's essential, right, to set up the right, kind of metrics, so the right understanding how you're going to assess things, right?
Yeah, that's something I try to do from the initial meeting with a prospect or client is just always being as transparent as possible. But I guess as far as like results go, as you're aware, in SEO depends, but I'm typically for like freelance local, I would probably say it could be anywhere from like I guess a few weeks to like a few months. But yeah, it really depends. Like I know if you're in like a super competitive niche, I guess for like say like e-commerce, maybe could be like probably at least 3 months. So, but I think it's getting in and getting those quick wins. So it's just going back to like building strong content, making sure like you have good internal linking set up, navigational, making sure your site is like a short crawl depth for Google. And those could help. And then obviously over time, it's like being proactive and trying to reach out to people and just creating content that ideally people would want to link to.
By the way, talking about content creation process, right? How do you manage this with your clients, right? Do you kind of basically tell your clients how to deliver this kind of giving them guidelines, or it's kind of a mutual project? So how does it work on your end?
Yeah. So for freelance, essentially what I'll do is I will use some keyword research. So I'll essentially find, what I've been doing is say if like there's services on the website, so I'll try to find supporting content around that. But essentially what I'll do is I'll basically like use ChatGPT and I'll put in the keyword and I'll ask it to like summarize like all the headings and like put it into like a content outline, and then ask it to like fill in any gaps. And essentially from there, I'll hand it off to a writer, and essentially they'll create that content. And then, yeah, that's pretty much my plan is, but as far as like the client goes, most of them are pretty happy. I know like they have the trust and they're able to approve the content we're creating. But usually I've done some initial research where it's like I understand like who they're targeting, what their demographics are, like their end goals and things like that.
What may I ask you about, because there are a lot of conversations about importance and not importance of EAT. So what's your perspective on this?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an over focus maybe on the I'm not want to say the over focus, but I think I mean I've heard there's been mentions of Gary Ellis and Charles Floats mentioned that like EAT is primarily like backlinks. But I think it's also important beyond just SEO for conversions to make sure like when someone's reading the content they're aware like who's producing it and like what their expertise is and just like is it topical. So I think EAT is important, but beyond for I guess conversions as rather just SEO. I mean, I think backlinks are going to get you most of the way, but you also want to make sure the content stands out, especially in those like massive niches. I mean, if you're like a DR90 or a DR80 and you're worried about like having the best eats, like I would almost focus more on like having those strong backlinks and obviously setting up like bio pages and things like that. But I think sometimes there's an over focus on the ET versus the A, authority. Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just like you would prioritize first of all authority and then expertise, right? So you would start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd start setting up the things that you can actively control first. So obviously, you can control like the bios and such and such. Like this was reviewed by so and so. But yeah, I would focus on that first because that's more of like I guess a one-time process, and versus say if you're trying to increase the authority, which is like ongoing. So it's like you have to continue to like think of new things and run campaigns and things like that.
Yeah, but where is right? Okay, so let's say we have a new website, right? Quite fresh one.
Yeah.
And we want to produce content, right? So do we need right at this stage to worry about expertise or something like that, or we just kind of hire, a freelancer that has more or less okayish experience, let's say, right? So let's say like, we are in the travel niche, so we hire someone that can write about, traveling, which kind of have the right portfolio, but, we just put the content under one of the employees' names, founders' names, whatever it is, and that is it. Or there should be something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would say it really depends. Obviously, if you're just starting a new site out, you might not have money, or not a lot of money to get like those experts within the field. So I would say like you could start off with a freelancer as long as they do have some experience, and you can mention like they've worked with X amount of sites and they like doing this and they've been writing. But yeah, I mean, I would say initially focus on it, but not to tend to overthink it, because I think it's just part of the things that Google does look at. And as you saw, they mentioned like it's not a ranking factor though. It's always like hard to know. I mean,
a lot of speculations are happening there, right? So because there is a little bit of a guessing game, right? You don't really know where to put your bets, and you're kind of trying to diversify the risks. And since it's a buzzword, most probably, right? A lot of people are talking about this, and it's quite easy, right, to go down that route.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to go back to like what we know is definitive. So as we're aware, Google built their algorithm on backlinks, and they've mentioned time and time again that those do help. So it's like I'd rather focus on something that has definitive proof, but also making sure you're setting up those strong foundations. But yeah, I think sometimes it's like in SEO we focus on like these things that like it'll help a little, but it's not like really going to move the needle. So I think it's just focusing on those things that are going to have like the biggest movement. Um, I mean, I could,
What will be creating the biggest movements, right? In your have been creating the biggest movements. What kind of things in your experience?
yeah, I mean, it's been mostly continuing to add those strong contextual internal links to both supporting content and blog content and the re-optimization of content. So I try to do that every 3 months to just make sure the content's up to
Hmm.
date. Um, and then I try to at least have, I guess, three to five plus supporting content for each like pillar page. So I've noticed the best movements there. And then also, as far as menu goes, top navigation, bottom navigation, making sure you're having like the most important pages there. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to have HTML sitemap set up as well. So again, making sure you're
Mm-hmm.
having like the majority of pages in there as as long as like they're important. But I mean, I think if you nail the majority of those things and you're actively trying to just promote your content and outreach, you'll get pretty far in SEO.
Yeah, okay. So it's just, by the way, talking about the content update, right?
Mhm.
How do you update all the pages, or you kind of you have kind of a workflow, a way of identifying the pages that needs to be the pages that need to be updated, I would say.
I generally will try to find what's already ranking highly, just so you're getting the right effort out of it. Because as you're aware, like sometimes you can put all this effort into one post and like it doesn't rank at all, but then like there's all these pages that rank. So I think it's just investing the time and the content that's already doing well to have the maximum return on investment. And then I think once you do that, it's working your way down to the ones that are ranking a bit, but not for a ton of stuff. Because like maybe in the initial like time you created the content, maybe like the focus keyword was not like the best. So like I've had some success where like we've changed the target keyword and we've been able to increase some of the traffic that way. So I think like sometimes like as SEOs we'll like maybe do a certain keyword and then go back and be like, oh, like maybe I should have been around this instead. And I've seen like some improvements that way too.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think it might make sense to look at search engine results just because
Yeah.
the intent might have changed over the time, right? So it's not necessarily the same, depends on the market and also most probably on how, because sometimes Google also doesn't understand quite well the intent and showing very different websites, but through the time after they've been able to collect more information, they are getting more confident, right, in what users ideally want to see, and the results, right, showing a bit different results. So, most probably checking search engine results is also playing, a significant role here, right? And I wanted to ask, I have the very last question, right?
Okay.
Um, which will be about an evergreen SEO strategy,
Mhm.
right? That you could recommend our listeners, right? So we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I've mentioned it a few times so far, but I think it's just going back to like I mentioned, having those strong contextual internal links. I think another thing too is like having the semantic type website, so just making it obvious to Google that like I think is just able to read your website and it's not like super complex. Another thing too is like having a fast website. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't tend to like over obsess over the core web vitals, but I think it's important to make sure you have a fast website on mobile. So I think it's like 3 seconds or less. And I'm guessing desktop is probably like similar to that. But yeah, I mean, the biggest hold is like if people can't get on your website, it's super slow. You're going to be dead in the water. So I would say those things and continuing to re-optimize content over time, I think is really important.
So circling back to your old content, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's continuing to re-optimize that, especially like I think sometimes there's a focus always putting out new content, but like if something's already ranking well, like it's gonna be much easier to make improvements in that than say we've created a blog post and we're starting like from square one again. So I would say, yeah. So it's like the contextual internal links, creating, I guess, 3 to 5 plus pages per pillar topic, user experience, and like page speed. I would say those are, and being semantic SEO, I would say those are like the ones that I think are evergreen that like, hard to say, but hopefully they'll stand the test of time. I mean, it's hard to tell with Google at this point, but I would say I think that and just having content that if someone's asking like, how do I get to the mall in such and such town, like answer that question like the first or second paragraph. I know. I think even they mentioned something about that where it's like they'll mention this is a article about a question and they don't actually answer the question. So it's like you want to make sure that like people can actually answer the question. And I think that could be one of the reasons why Reddit has flown off as much, because it's like there's not a ton of fluff. And I think as SEOs, sometimes we puts a little, not as, I mean, it's gotten better recently, but there's sometimes it'll be a lot of fluff. It's like just get to the point. So I think it's just making that
Yeah, we
content
love long form content, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we want to kind of put all efforts in this page and hoping to reach really good results, right? By just kind of expanding, right, the search term that we're using and topics, that are kind of covered there, but not necessarily that is the best content for an end user. That is a separate story, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think over time there's sometimes a focus on being like it needs to be this exact word count, but I mean, I think as long as you're answering the question and you're providing enough detail, I think it's generally okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, for sharing your evergreen SEO strategies, right? And thank you very much for the conversation. Well, I have the very last question to you. How can our listeners connect with you? What will be the best way to find you?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Peter Rota, and I'm mostly there. I have a personal website as well, so it's peterrotaseo.com. But yeah, I mean those are the two places I frequent, and I post pretty frequently on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to follow me on there and engage. But yeah, otherwise, thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us today. That was a pure pleasure and hope to talk with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.